Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vedya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Marupena Sanstitaha, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sanstitaha, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Buddhirupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Lakshmi Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. So we begin the 8th chapter of our text this evening, wherein Hemaleka explains the symbolism in the allegory we had earlier. Now, we actually did have some explanations of who these characters were in the notes in that chapter, but she goes into it from here. Puneet, will you help us out, please?
Sure. Chapter 8. Evam priyavacha shrutva gyatva tattvam maheshituhu Tripuran chinmayam hema lekha vakyena nishchitam Ashvasta chitara tripuram guna rupa maheshwirim gyatva gurubhya paramama maheshwarya vibhavitaha tameka bhavanagunato hemachudo bhavadridam. So thus, having heard the speech of his beloved, having known certainly the transcendental and true principle of the great Lord of the universe, consisting of pure consciousness, by the words of Hemalekha, having a mind possessed of confidence, and having known from the Gurus the great goddess Tripura, the Supreme One with a form endowed with auspicious qualities, revealed by the power of grace of the great Lord, Hemachuda became one following her with single devotion firmly through spiritual disciplines.
Yes. So he has now opened his heart to Hemaleka, not as just his wife, but as a woman of knowledge, of wisdom. And he's begun to pull out of her this Atma Vidya, this knowledge of the self, this ultimate reality. Going on. I think you're muted.
Oops. Evam paropasena vyatiyukepi masakaha Tripura parameshani prasadamakarod hridi Vishaya vimukham chittam vichara paramam babhao. Thus, a few months elapsed in the worship of the Supreme Goddess Tripura. Tripura, the supreme ruler, manifested her grace in his heart. His mind, which was turned away from objects of sense, became solely occupied with investigation.
So, what is the role of Upasana? What is the role of worship? It purifies the head and the heart. And again, we talked about the lower level of Upasana is when you go to the God to get stuff. Oh, heal my auntie, make me do well on the exam, help my business prosper, etc. The higher level is when you worship the goddess or whatever your Ishta Devata is, just out of love of the infinite. Out of love for the infinite. Now, here is a very important principle in the spiritual life, which is indicated in this verse. Shrunahu, listen carefully. We are not healed so much by what we turn from, but by what we turn to. We are not healed so much by what we turn from, but by what we turn to. I mean, yes, we need to be aware of our doshas, our various defects of character. For God's sake, be aware of our attachments, etc. But we don't want to get caught up in morbid self-examination and reflection. In the end, that can serve to concretize, to solidify egoism. What this verse is indicating is don't worry too much about the world. Instead, go toward the infinite. Love God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, as the Hebrew scripture says. And let the world gradually leave you. So here, as Hemachuda is more and more engrossed in his love for God and his desire for liberation, the attachments, the irritations, the annoyances, etc., of the worldly life no longer afflict him. They don't bug him so much. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Etavad durlubham loke puranugrahamantara vichara pravanam jittam yanmukhyam moksha karanam. So much is difficult to be attained in this world without the grace of the Supreme Goddess, since a mind devoted to investigation is the principal means of liberation.
So here, as his mind turns inward, he is wanting to investigate. And this ultimately comes by grace. But again, we invoke grace by our practice. Again, there's an old Zen proverb, enlightenment comes by accident. Zazen makes you accident prone. So we continue our various forms of sadhana. And then the mind more and more turns inward, turns inward. Next verse.
Rama yavan jayeta vichara paramam manaha na tavat shreyasa yoga upayanam shatai kvachit. Rama, as long as the mind does not become devoted to investigation, so long there is no acquisition of the highest good by hundreds of means anywhere.
So, what is this investigation? The word in Sanskrit is vichara, which comes from the root vich, which means to winnow, to separate the wheat from the chaff, or the grain from the chaff. So it's to be able to see what I need to let go of and to see what's really important. The highest form of vichara is discrimination between the self and the not self, the subject and all the objects, the real and the unreal. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. That's the discrimination. So that's where the mind ultimately is to turn. Who am I? What is my essential nature? What is this world? How has it come about? It's funny. Back in 1994, I was retracing Swamiji's spiritual journey on a pilgrimage. And I was in Kerala, and I was going to go hang out at Adi Shankara Nilayam in Kerala. But the hugging saint, Amaji, has an ashram there. And so I hung out there for about 10 days. Place was packed with people. People were coming from all over the world, and certainly from all over India. And people would wait in line for literally days and hours. And they'd get up to Amaji, and then they'd ask her questions. Oh, should my son marry this girl? Oh, should I go into business with so and so? It's like they were using her as a fortune teller. And she would give her best advice. But it's a waste of this precious time with the Guru. Ask the Guru, what do I need to know? Who am I? What is my essential nature? What is this world? How has it come about? Very, very sad to see that. And too frequently, we bring our worldly problems, not that you shouldn't, but in time, those just kind of fall by the wayside. Get to the real stuff. Any thoughts on this?
Jim, I have a question about what you mentioned just a few minutes ago.
Surely.
So you're sort of defining discrimination as trying to vichara as discrimination between the self and the not self. And in that, one gets an idea that it's discrimination between different uh, experiences, or sort of the content of experiences. Would it also be correct to define discrimination as trying to separate content from context?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but the way the scriptures approach it. Do you see the water glass?
Yes.
You are the one who's seeing the water glass. The water glass is an object of cognition. You're not a water glass.
Right.
All right, you can go through all perceptions in the five outer senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. You're not a sound, you're not a sight, etc.
Right.
All right. When you were a child, you had a little body. You went through
Right.
adolescence and your body changed. Now you're an adult, your body has changed again. Are you not aware of the changes in your body?
Very much.
All right, take a deep breath. Feel the breath in the body. Are you not aware of that experience?
Very much.
You're not your body. You're the one who's knowing the body. We go to the realm of feelings. Sometimes I feel joy. Sometimes I feel sorrow. Sometimes I'm angry. Sometimes I'm sad. But don't you know the feelings?
Right. So all of this is what I'm calling content.
Yeah. So what is the ultimate no word? That's what we're driving at. You can call it context. That's a perfectly good word.
Okay.
But that's the ultimate vichara that the scriptures will invite us to undertake. Who's the knower of even the ego sense? And the rules of the game, the puzzle, are this: if it has a beginning and an end, if it occurs in time and space, if it's in the past, present, or future exclusively, if it's in the waking, dream, or deep sleep state exclusively, if it's a physical object, if it's an emotion, if it's a thought, if it changes in any way, and most importantly, if it can be objectively known, that isn't it. Drop it. Now, what is it that is nitya? That's real, that's undeniable, that never changes, that is the same. Find out that eternal factor, which is the subject, the knower of it all. This is discrimination between the real and the unreal. Nitya, anitya vastu vivekaha. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yep. Thank you.
Good question. Good question. The essential question. Now, at the end of this process, we're still left with two entities, self and not self. What this text is going to focus on, okay, now what's this not self stuff? And then the scriptures say, well, actually, it's the self too. Sa guna Brahman. The eternal subject is nirguna Brahman. But the phenomenal world is, in fact, Brahman. It's just consciousness appearing as name and form. If you look at it from one side, we say mithya, illusion, vaitatya, falseness, pratibimba, like a reflection in a mirror, swapna, like a dream. But if you look at it from this standpoint, sarvam kalvidam brahma, all this is verily Brahman. Both are true. So we look for what is the material cause of the phenomenal world. What's the stuff made out of? Just like all ornaments are gold, all vessels are clay. What's this world made of? Brahman. It's made of consciousness. Held together by thought. That's all it is. So we investigate not only the pure self, Nirguna Brahman, but the phenomenal world, Saguna Brahman. Have to do both. Have to do both. All right, next verse.
Can I ask a question?
Wait, another question? Sure.
Related, both on the Saguna and Nirguna Brahman. Can we connect the same way with the way the Prakasha Rupa and the Vimarsha? Prakasha is being the Nirguna and the Vimarsha is the reflection. Would that be or is it totally off?
Prakasha, we think of that as light. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Yeah, the light of consciousness versus the Vimarsha as the modification. One is the unmanifested.
Well, when we use the term like the light of consciousness, we mean that it illumines things, just like a lamp illumines the objects in the room. So what is the ultimate light by which everything is made known? What is that by which everything is known, without which nothing can be known? That's consciousness. Now the question is, does that light actually undergo a real change? Does it actually have a modification? That's a very good question. It seems to undergo a modification. Let me see if I can give you an example. The sun is in the sky. The one superior light, shining through a ruby, an emerald, and a topaz. Topaz are blue, aren't they?
I'm not clear. Yeah.
A blue gem.
Yeah. Okay.
Underneath that, I've got just white paper. So I say, the sun is red light. No. The sun is green light. No. The sun is blue light. Actually, the light undergoes no change at all, ultimately. What has changed is the medium through which it shines. So also, infinite consciousness shining through your body, mind, intellect, enlivening your body, mind, intellect, creates the equipment that you identify as you. Same thing with the dog, same thing with worms and germs. All that changes is the equipment, and that equipment itself is nothing but consciousness seeming to appear as name and form. This becomes very easy to understand if you go to the dream state. Remember, you are the god of your dream. In the dream state, I have a dream body with a dream ego From that dream body, I have a locus of perception, and I see a phenomenal world outside, and I have thoughts and feelings inside. But it is my one mind, chitta, which is appearing as subject and object. Are the people, places, things of my dream real? Well, they're certainly experienced. But if I dream about gold coin, I can't knock them out of my ears in the morning and put them on the dresser. Are they real or not? This is the strange power of Maya. So you have mini Maya at night. Does that make it a little clearer?
Oh, yeah, perfect. Perfect example of a dream where you are your own material, your own created. So this waking state is just exactly like a dream. Only difference is that
The question
God.
is who's doing the dreaming.
Yes.
All this is Ishvara is doing the dreaming. That's the difference.
Thank you.
And you as an individual are deluded by your dream. The Lord is not.
Correct. Thanks for the connection. Thanks.
Excellent question. Excellent question. Any others? All right, next verse.
अथ भूय स कस्मिन् चित्तेन रहसि वैतया संगत प्रियया यन्त विचार परमानसः. Then on a certain day he again met his beloved in private with a mind extremely devoted to investigation.
So his mind has become sharp. It's become Vishuddha, very pure. He's sattvic. And now he's ready for investigation to ask the important questions. Going on.
Ayantam swaniketam tam durat kantam dadarshasa utthaya tam samaniya swasane vinaveshya cha पादप्रक्षालनाध्यायस्तं पूजयित्वा यथाविधिः प्रोवाच आमृतनिश्य andasuंdaram paramam vachah. She saw her husband coming to her mansion from a distance, standing up, fetching him, seating him on an excellent seat, and receiving him with respect according to the rules by washing his feet and other acts, spoke to him excellent words which were beautiful and dripping with nectar.
So even though she is the guru, she plays her role as his wife and treats him with the deference and respect because he's a prince. And, lovingly, let's see what happens. Going on.
Preshta tvam adhya pashyami chiraya nanute vapuhu nirujam kachidasidvai yato rogaspadam vapuhu. Dearest, I see you today after a long time indeed. Was your body free from ailments? Since the body is the abode of diseases, I would like to know.
So she says, how do you feel, basically? She hasn't seen him for quite some time. So she's kind of going to test him a little bit. See if he's still all caught up in worldly pursuits. She asks how he's feeling. Is that why he was neglecting her? Going on.
Tanva ma chashva vrittantam yato naham smrita tvaya nanu mama samalokya cha prabhashya kadapite. Natya gadhinna bhagopi tadevam kuta asthitam. Therefore, tell me the news, since I have not been remembered by you. Without seeing me and without talking to me, even a part of a day did not pass at any time for you. Therefore, how did you remain thus?
So before, in the beginning, he couldn't keep his hands off of her, pawing her day and night. Then he starts to question her and question her and question her. Now he's gone off on his own. She hasn't seen him for quite a while. Tell me what's going on. Let's see. Going on.
Manyeham tena bhimate vartanam nahi vartmani swapne vapi kuto antra kuta evam abhudavat katham ratristvataya nita chaikapi yuga sammita mam vina prakashanopyoko yuga kalpa suduksaha इत्युक्त्वा सा समालक्ष्य खिन्नेवाभूत् क्षणं ततः. I believe that your proceeding on a path not liked by me does not at all happen even in a dream. How can it happen elsewhere? Tell me how it happened in this manner. How even one night resembling an aeon was passed by you. Previously, even a moment without me was similar to an aeon and unbearable. Having thus spoken, she remained, as it were, dejected for a moment thereafter, embracing him.
So she starts to smooch. You've been neglecting me. In times before, you were with me all the time. Now I'm lonely. Where have you been? So she's testing him. She's testing him. She's going to see what happens. Going on.
Sopi priya samalishto neshadvikritimāyayo praha priyena mamevam vimohayittumarhasi. But he, embraced by his wife, did not attain any perturbation even slightly. He said, "Dear, you ought to not perplex me in this manner."
So she starts to, rub him and stuff like that to see if he gets excited and stuff. And he says, don't go there. That's not why I'm here. I've set that stuff aside. Don't perplex me with this. So let's go on.
Gyata mayasi sudridham nasti te shoka karanam paravargnya tvam dhira moha sattvam vaikatham sprishet. You have been firmly understood by me. There is no cause for sorrow in you. You are the knower of the higher and lower knowledge and resolute or composed. How indeed can delusion touch you?
So he says, I know that you're a woman of wisdom. What are you doing? This is all BS. I know you're not really dejected nor feeling amorous. Going on.
Tatvam prashtum samayato yatta dakshyami sangshinu yat prak swavrittam kathitam tat sputatam me smariraya. Therefore, I have come to ask you that which I shall declare. Listen, tell me clearly that story of yours which was narrated previously.
So he's not going to fall into her test and set aside his real question and get caught up in being attached again to sensory experience. He doesn't get deflected from his question. So now he says, I'm not clear about the meaning of the allegory. Tell me what it means. Going on.
Kasa te janani prokta sakhi va tatpatishcha kah tatputradhya apichake mama va te kwa samvada. Who is she spoken of as your mother? Who is your friend and her husband? Who are their sons and the others? Tell me where they are in relation to me.
So he wants to know who these characters are in the allegory that we studied. Going on.
Na tan maya suviditam, na tan manye mrishoditam, kintu tvaya nigaditam, vyapadeshena sarvatha. That has not been well understood by me. I do not think that it has been uttered falsely, but it has been told by you under pretext or concealing the facts entirely.
So, one of the things that he illustrates in this verse that's important, never ever feel shy about not understanding. Swamiji used to thunder, I don't want any stupid questions. And he'd say, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. That is so important. Don't have any pride. Ask. Ask. It is the nature of the Guru to resolve our doubts, to pour out their wisdom. So he's clear that this was not pretext by her. She wasn't just jerking his chain. There must have been a deeper meaning to this. He just didn't understand it. So he says, I don't get it. Tell me what it means. What's the deeper meaning of this allegory? Going on.
Tadvi vachya prakathaya yatha gyasye tvaham sputam aham tvam suprapannosmi chinnidhi me hridi sanshayam. Narrate that to me, separating the facts, or ascertaining the facts, so that I shall understand it clearly. I am fully taking refuge in you. Remove the doubt in my heart.
Yes. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Explain it to me so I can ascertain its deeper meaning. I'm taking refuge in you. Now, let me take a little hiatus here. I was talking with a student a week ago, and she had been working with a teacher who said to her things like, I think you and so should get together. I think you should move from hither to thither. My suggestion is I would be very wary of a teacher who made those kinds of micromanaging suggestions, especially about you should couple with so and so, etc., or stuff like that. It was very rare, in my experience with Swamiji, that he would give me directive advice like that. I used to always wonder, how come he never tells me what to do? And then I realized she's always telling me what to do: discriminate between the real and the unreal, let go of my attachments to the world of name and form, renounce my identifications with forms of self. I mean, he was constantly telling me what to do, but he didn't say, take this job, move to this house, etc. Every once in a while, he'd make a direct suggestion, but it was very rare, very, very rare. At the end of a camp, I'd frequently say, Swamiji, what do you want me to do? And he would say, I have no desires. So I couldn't get to what the psychologist calls someone in loco parentis, in the place of your parent. The guru is not your daddy who's going to run your life so you can abdicate responsibility for it. It's not what surrender means. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Eva mukta hemalekha prasanna vadanekshana matva surnirmaladhyam puranu grahasantu yutam. Thus told, Himalekha was delighted in her face and eyes, having observed him as one possessed of an extremely pure intellect and endowed with the grace of God or Tripura.
So she tested him to see how identified or attached he was. He did not fall for her ruse. He stays single pointed with his vichara. This pleases her. Sometimes the guru will poke, see where you might have attachments or aversions. My personal feeling, I think life does a good enough job of that all by itself. I don't necessarily need to help it out very much. But it's sometimes done, which she's tested in here. Going on.
Nanu me shoti vimukho vishayebhyoti dhairyatah vidha shaktya maheshanya phalita punya sanchayah. Certainly, this one is fully turned away from objects of sense on account of great firmness of mind, governed or penetrated by the power of grace of the great goddess Tripura. The store of his meritorious deeds has borne fruit.
Yes. So she has seen that he now has a pure mind, and therefore his mind is ready for the higher knowledge. He's done enough karma yoga, enough bhakti yoga, so that his mind can now travel the subtler directions of thought. Going on.
Kala prabodhane chayam bodhayami tatasvitam nathato natateho mahabhagyam praptamisha kripavashat. This is the time for awakening him. Therefore, I shall teach him the truth. She said, Lord, great fortune has been obtained by you through the grace of God.
So he's now ripe enough that she can enlighten him. He can receive the highest wisdom. Let's see how she does it.
Anyatha naiva vishaya vairasyam pashyati kvachit etal lakshanam mishasya anugre gyeyamaditah. Otherwise, one does not at all perceive the insipidity or unpleasantness of objects of sense anywhere. This characteristic should be known from the beginning when there is the grace of God.
So, how does the guru know that the student has become ripe and is ready for the highest knowledge? When the mind has turned away from its attachment for its excessive involvement with the world. That doesn't mean you don't go to work, you don't take care of your family, etc. But you can feel it when someone is, it's all about making the money. Or, oh, I want a boyfriend. Oh, I want a girlfriend. Or absolutely obsessed with the approval of other people. In Viveka Chudamani, we just went through a section of the 3 layers or levels of attachments that we have. Deha Vasana, Loka Vasana, Shastra Vasana. Deha Vasana, the vasanas about the body itself, being rubbed and touched and sex and food and that kind of stuff. Lokavasana. Loka means world or people. So it's all of our needs that we have or desires with other people, approval, romantic love, status, attention, all those various needs. That's Lokavasana. Shastravasana literally means unnecessary study of the scriptures. The deeper meaning is, I think I can figure it out. It's about the acquisition of more information. These are the kinds of people who obsessively go through scripture after scripture after scripture and commentary after commentary after commentary, thinking if the more information, the more data they acquire, they're somehow going to figure it out, that this is figure outable. Of course, around that, Krishna says, he who knows, knows it not. He who knows it not, knows it. So it's not about having all the data, the information. It's about the unknowing of the mind. So all 3 layers of vasana need to be dealt with till the mind is pure and still. Heart is open. Then we're ready for the highest knowledge. Let's see what she says.
Anyatha naiva vishaya. I think I did this. Sorry. Bhoga vairasya param vichara pravanam manah hantate sampravakshami vrittim prokta sadatmanah. The other characteristic is tastelessness in enjoyments and a mind devoted to investigation. Ah, I shall explain to you the state of the real self which has been narrated. Note, the following verses provide the key to the allegory narrated in chapter 5. The key has already been incorporated in the notes appearing below the verses in chapter 5 for the sake of proper appreciation of the narrative. Therefore, no further notes are appended to the following verses.
So the other thing is tastelessness with the world. You know, again, Krishna has these wonderful images of like a few drops of water in the ocean. You know, that I like to use the example, the world becomes trinkets and baubles. There's nothing substantial out there. No need to get riled up over it anymore. All right, let's go on.
Para chittirme janani sakhi buddhirmata mama avidya tvasati sokta yaya buddhi susangata. My mother is the supreme or transcendental consciousness, and the intellect is considered as my friend. Nescience or ignorance is spoken of as the bad woman with whom the intellect was associated.
So, her mother is transcendental consciousness. Her friend is the intellect. But that intellect then becomes covered by ignorance, what we call avarana shakti, the veiling power of ignorance. From that, all the rest of the misery proceeds. Going on.
Avidya yastu samarthyam loke spashtam vichitritam yadrajyao sarpamabhasya mahabhitim prayachati. The wonderful power of ignorance is clearly perceived in the world since it gives great fear, manifesting a serpent in a rope.
So this is the classic Vedanta image of the serpent and the rope. I do not see the rope, so instead I imagine a serpent, and then I'm filled with fear. So because I do not see my essential nature, Satchidananda Rupa, my form is existence, consciousness, bliss. Rope. I then imagine I am the body. I'm the body plus the personality. I am caste, creed, religion, relationships, etc. Snake. From that proceeds all the worry, the fear, the craziness. Going on.
Mahamohastu tatpuro mana tasya suto bhavat tasya patni kalpana syatat suta panchaye bhavan jnanendriyani te pancha tatsthanam golakam bhavet vishayanam pramoshtastu sanskaro manaso bhavet. Her son was great delusion, and mind was his son. His wife was imagination, and her sons, who were 5 in number, were the 5 organs of perceptions. Their location or residence was the globe or the external organ of perception. The taking away or stealing of the objects was the impression of the mind carried by it on account of its contact with objects.
So what happens is the mind comes into being, manas, where judgment, the value of things is determined. That is good, that is bad, that is useful, that is not. Memory sets in. Ooh, that was wonderful. I want to repeat it. Then the subtle sense organs. Note we locate the sense organs in the subtle body. We do that because you perceive all five, have all 5 sense perceptions in the dream state. But then they function through the gross sense organs and the physical body to make contact with the world. Then rub-a-dub-dub all over those sense objects where I garner pleasant and unpleasant experiences. These then, through memory, reside in the mind, and then I want to repeat those experiences or avoid them. The whole process of samsara gets set in motion. Going on.
Tadbhoga swapna bhoga syat kalpanaya swasatuya mahashana bhavedasha tasya yau tanuja vubhau krodho lobhascha tavuktau tatpuram tu sharirakam mama yastu mahamantra swarupaspuranam hitat. The enjoyment of those objects was the enjoyment in a dream. Mahashana, who was the sister of Kalpana or imagination, was Asha or desire, and her two sons, who were referred to, were anger and greed. Their city was the body. That which was my great mantra was indeed the throb or manifestation of my essential nature.
That's the Mahamantra, she said?
The great mantra, yes, Mahamantra.
Yes, yes. So the whole idea here is, again, once we start to dance with the objects of the senses and we develop an addictive relationship with these experiences, desire sets up, that becomes habituated. Then what happens is I have the torture of longing and the torture of anger when my desire gets thwarted. But the way out is the rediscovery of the self. What does self-realization give us? It gives us existential freedom, meaning I know at the deepest level of my very being, nothing can touch me. Nothing will harm me. I never change. And I have finally figured out where is happiness. It's not in the world. It's the mind freed from its craving when the mind comes home. Swamiji used to say, hurry home, hurry home. Going on.
Prana prachara samprokto manasastu priya sakha kanta radhyastu naraka evam sarvam pratititam. Prana, or the vital breath, was described as prachara, the dear friend of the mind. The forests and the others were hells. Thus everything has been explained.
So the prana, the vital energy, is what causes all the various functions of this mechanism to happen. And why we call these realms hells? Because they are always imbued with sorrow. The most pleasurable of experience is laced with sorrow. Why? Because it ends. Oh, that was so good. Now it's over. Or the law of diminishing return. You get a box of See's chocolates. The first chocolate is wonderful. When you've eaten the second layer of the 2-pound box, then you're nauseous. Diminishing returns. That's this world. So now she's explained the allegory. Going on. Any questions about it before we move on? We went into it in depth in chapter 5. It's not important that you identify all these various characters. If you've forgotten them, it's not a big deal. Next one.
Maya buddhe sangamastu samadhir abhidhiyate manma triloka samprapti moksha priya udahritah. The association of the intellect with me is called samadhi. Dear, arriving at the world of my mother is called moksha or liberation.
So what is samadhi? The etymology that I like is sama, which is, it means equanimity, the mind, absolute equanimity of mind. When the mind is tuned up. There are various kinds of samadhi. There's savikalpa samadhi, when the mind is absolutely quiescent while I have the perception of the phenomenal world. I don't let the mind extrovert into the world. Nirvikalpa samadhi, when the mind ends, and there's no individual perceiver and no phenomenal world. But the highest state is sahaja samadhi, where naturally or continuously you never forget who you are without effort. There's no longer any need for vichara. And naturally, the mind is not extrovert because you see the world for what it is. Any thoughts?
Jim, the wording of this text, of this particular line, was a little confusing because she says the association of the intellect with me. What is me in this case? It means
So the jiva is fundamentally the same as Brahman.
I see. Okay,
there is no real difference. So the mind coming home, the intellect abiding in the self, where it doesn't extrovert. That's what she's referring to.
Okay.
How do we do that? The intellect gets its own fundamental unreality. The intellect gets that no personal sense of self is real. You cannot think a real thought. The only thing that's real is aham, aham, aham. Everything else is mithya, is mine. So it never forms or grabs on anything anymore. All right, next verse.
Evam prokta svavrittanta tvamaptyeva vidho nanu tadhyukta yetat suvigyaya param shreya samapnuhi. Thus my history has been explained. You are also indeed of such a kind. Therefore, understanding this well by reasoning, obtain the highest good.
So what's true about the Guru is true about you. You are that divine Tripura. Get rid of the intellect's unsavory friend, ignorance. How? Rediscover your self-nature. Discriminate between the real self and this chit-chaya, this shadow, this reflection, caught in the web of thought, as Swamiji used to say. No personal sense of self is real. Let them all go. Next verse.
That was the last verse of the chapter.
All right, that's a good place to stop. That ends chapter 8. So we have about 5 minutes, 7 minutes or so for questions. So the practice that's implied in all of this, discriminate between the self and the not self. I am not the body. I am not the prana. I am not any feeling or judgment. I'm not any thought. They are mithya. They are false. They're not real. And I'm not ahankara. I'm not the thought of self. Whenever my mind says, I am Jim, that's an illusion. Also, I am happy. I am sad. I am smart. I am stupid. Whenever you have I am and you fill in the blank, you highlight whatever's on the blank and hit delete. You stay with just I am. And then in the end, even drop that idea. Any other thoughts, comments, insights? Okay, let's sit.